Hello, Trumptonshire fans. You are about to listen to an exciting story all the way from Trumptonshire. It is read by me, Mr Nanders, and it is called Teddy Bear Lost. I do hope you enjoy it. Now let us begin. It's a beautiful sunny morning in Trumptonshire, and Mrs Honeyman is out for a stroll with her baby in his pram. The birds are singing, and in the distance she can hear the calm, rhythmic turning of the windmill sails at Collie's Mill. She had not walked far from the telephone box on the corner of Camberwick Road and Collie's Lane when she spied something in the long, dry grass at the side of the lane. On closer inspection, she found that it was a small, brown teddy bear with a shiny black nose and red buttons on his tummy. He was a lovely little bear, but unfortunately he was a bit loose at one seam, and his stuffing was poking out of a small hole like fluffy candy floss. "Oh dear," said Mrs Honeyman. "I wonder how you got here," she said to herself. She turned to her baby, who was busily finishing off his rusk. "I wonder who he belongs to. Some poor little child must have dropped him and is now fretting somewhere that he's lost forever. But what could she do to find this teddy's owner?" "I know," she said. "I'll ask Mr Miller if he saw anyone else walking along the lane this morning." So she set off to Collie's Mill, tucking the teddy into folds of her baby's pram blankets. At Collie's Mill, Windy was already busy transferring sacks of corn from the granary to the mill. There are lots of sacks of corn to move, because the monster mechanical millers in Wintlebury have been closed for maintenance, and so all the local farmers are bringing their corn to Windy to do a proper job. Windy has a helper now. Paulie Pierrot is stopping and has been a big help during this busy time. Windy stops heaving the heavy sacks when he sees Mrs Honeyman walking toward him from the narrow lane. He mops his brow and takes a gulp from a demijohn kept in the shade of the granary shed. "Ah, Windy," says Mrs Honeyman, "just the fellow." She explains her lost teddy bear story to him, and Windy listens with interest. "So perhaps you might have seen someone early this morning. A family with a child who most likely has dropped this teddy and is now fretting for his return." "Well, let's see," thought Windy. "The only people I see regularly this early in the morning are farmers, the milkman and postman Peter. Oh, I saw Fireman Dibble pass on his bicycle as he does every morning." Then Windy laughed. "Fireman Dibble is 6'4" and 3 feet wide. I doubt he would have dropped a teddy bear." "Oh dear," said Mrs Honeyman. "So who could he belong to?" "I'm afraid I don't know. Perhaps the men of Pippin Fort might know. They were out and about very early this morning, performing manoeuvres on Camberwick Common. Perhaps you could telephone them to ask for me," suggested Mrs Honeyman. Windy chuckled. "There are no telephones here at Collie's Mill, Mrs Honeyman. I have no wish to be connected to such a thing. If people need me, they know where I am and where to come." "Of course," said Mrs Honeyman. "Bill, I shall visit the fort myself. It is on my way back, after all. Thank you very much, Mr Miller." And with that Mrs Honeyman and her baby departed. At Pippin Fort the boys were on parade. Captain Flack, after having the story of the lost teddy bear relayed to him, scoffed at the idea that one of his boys may possess and have lost such an item. "We perform important and useful work for the county and community, Mrs Honeyman," he said loftily. "None of these boys has the time or inclination to possess such an item, and if they did, I would have something to say about that. No, the teddy bear doesn't belong to anyone here. Perhaps the best course of action is to hand the little chap into the lost property box at Trumpton police station." "Yes, that does seem the best option," said Mrs Honeyman. "I will go there now." Along Camberwick Road, Mrs Honeyman stops at Crockett's garage to chat to Mr Crockett, the garage owner. She tells him about her morning and where she is heading. "Well now," says Mr Crockett, "I'm about to set off for Oak Ridge Road on a breakdown call-out. Chippy Minton has left his car lights on overnight and has a flat battery. I can drop you in Trumpton on my way, if you like." "Oh, thank you, Mr Crockett. That would be most kind." In Trumpton Town Square, it is almost 9 o'clock and the start of a busy day. Constable Potter is standing in his usual spot on the corner pavement, outside Munning's printing shop. Mrs. Cobbett is setting up her flower stall beneath the fine statue of Queen Victoria, and Mr. Clamp is sorting through his morning delivery of produce. Mr Crockett drops Mrs Honeyman and her baby on the corner of Gordon Road, and she walks the short distance to Trumpton Town Square to talk to P.C. Potter. At 9 a.m. the Trumpton clock comes to life, the Trumpton clock, telling the time, steadily, sensibly, never too quickly, never too slowly, telling the time for Trumpton. The chimes ring out, struck by the hammer of Sir Rufus against the bell held by Lady de Trump. The mayor steps out onto the town hall balcony to check his watch is set correctly. He gives it a precautionary whine. Constable Potter listens to Mrs Honeyman's story and agrees that lost property is the best place for the teddy bear. He also suggests a notice be put on the Trumpton town notice board and says that Mr Munning could print some flyers. An excellent idea, agrees Mrs Honeyman. So Constable Potter takes the teddy bear to the police station while Mrs Honeyman arranges the printing of the flyers with Mr Munning. A short time later the posters are ready and Nick Fisher agrees to paste up as many as he can during his afternoon's work. He starts with the large notice board on the corner of Gordon Road. As he sets off, Miss Lovelace emerges from her hat shop, crosses the square and inquires about the posters. A lost teddy bear. Oh dear, how upset the little child must be to lose such a cherished companion. I do hope you find the owner, Mrs Honeyman. Just then the breeze that earlier had gently turned the sails of Windy's mill picked up into a brisk gust. Miss Cobbett's flowers bristled in their containers. The weather vane crowning the town hall whisked around, and the door to Miss Lovelace's shop slammed shut. "Oh!" exclaimed Miss Lovelace. "Oh dear, oh dear!" She looked very concerned. "Whatever is the matter?" asked Mrs Honeyman. "My door. It was not on the catch. I'm locked out of my shop and my little darlings are in there, all alone." Miss Lovelace raised her hands to her quickly reddening cheeks. She looked ready to burst into tears. "They get so agitated when I'm not around. They'll wreak havoc in my shop if I'm not there to supervise them." At that moment the mayor was emerging from the town hall, where Mr Philby, the mayor's chauffeur, was waiting to take him off to an important meeting in Welchester. He saw a very upset Miss Lovelace with concern. "What's wrong, Miss Lovelace? You look very upset. Is there anything I can help with?" But Miss Lovelace was far too upset to answer his questions, and so it was left to Mrs Honeyman to explain Miss Lovelace's predicament to the mayor. Come now, Miss Lovelace, there isn't a problem invented that we cannot solve if we all put our minds together." He took a glance over at Miss Lovelace's shop and rubbed his chin as he pondered. "Ah, yes," he exclaimed. "The solution is simple." Miss Lovelace dabbed her wet eyes with a pink floral handkerchief and looked to the mayor. "Really?" she sniffed. "Certainly," he affirmed. The mayor pointed to the milliner's shop. "You see? Your upstairs window is open. All we need do is find someone with a ladder to go up and climb in that window. They can then go downstairs and open your front door from the inside." "Oh, how wonderful!" cried Miss Lovelace. "But who do we know with a ladder?" "Chippy Minton," suggested Mr Troop, a town clerk, who is never far from the mayor's side. "No, he can't help, I'm afraid," said Mrs Honeyman. "His van's broken down and he's waiting for Mr Crockett to get him going again." "Oh," Miss Lovelace moaned. It was getting all too much for her. "Never fret, my dear," said the mayor. "Plan B it is, then." "What's Plan B?" asked Mrs Honeyman. "Mr Troop, phone the fire brigade and explain the situation. Tell them to come at once." "Very good, Your Honour." And Mr Troop marched off to his task. The phone is ringing in Trumpton's fire station control room. Captain Flack answers promptly. "Trumpton Fire Station, Captain Flack speaking." He listens to the caller for a moment. "What's that? Locked out of shop? Dogs trapped and may cause havoc. Need assistance entering premises? Yes. Right away. And within a few moments Captain Flack has flicked the lever to sound the bell, and his fire team assemble, in a true straight line for inspection. Captain Flack ensures all are present. He blows his whistle, and they stand to attention. "Pew, Barney McGrew, Cuthbert, Dibble, Grubb," he barks. The whistle is blown once again, and the team take their positions on the bright red fire truck driven by fireman Barney McGrew. They race to the location, with the fire bell ringing so everyone can move out of the way to let them pass. They arrive very quickly to take charge of the situation. This very exciting story will continue very soon. Thank you, Trumptonshire fans, for listening.